Oh, sorry.
Looks
I was
like
just
we've
going to
got a
let you know.
quorum.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Rosie. So I'm going to let everybody know that we're going to call to order here at 6:02, and we'll start with the pledge. And I'm going to ask Liz to lead us in the pledge this evening.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
When Zoom puts you at the top of my screen, that's what happens, Liz. I apologize. So let's go ahead and kick it off with a roll call, Rosie.
Okay. Director Craig? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I'm trying to find you. Yes, I'm here and present and accounted for.
Perfect. Director Cullen?
I'm here.
Director Jimenez?
Here.
Director Phillips?
Here.
Director Rocha?
Here.
Director Silva?
Here.
Alternate Vice President Tipton?
Present.
Vice President Cromie?
Here.
And President Lopez.
Here, wonderful. I want to make a few announcements here at the top of the meeting. I want to share with everybody that we brought the A team to the game tonight, so we won't have Erica. We've got somebody helping out here tonight. Rosie's going to be helping to clerk for us this evening, so I want to appreciate her effort. And also, Roy will not be joining us, but we do have council sitting in Roy's place, and I'm wondering if Michelle wants to introduce herself briefly.
Sorry, had to get that mute button off. Hi, I'm Michelle Sassano. I work with Roy. He's unfortunately had a family death and he is at a rosary this evening.
Well, thanks for joining us, Michelle. We appreciate you being here and stepping in and helping us out. So I want to go ahead and remind the public translation services are available by calling 425-436-6345 with an access code of 444666. Para el público que necesita el ayuda de traducción, sí está disponible en el número 425-436-6345 con el código 444666. So with that done, I'll just remind the public tonight, at any time you wish to speak and be recognized, we ask that you use a raise hand function, *9, or raise hand at the bottom of your Zoom screen, *9 via landline, and then *6 to unmute when the time is appropriate. And with that, we will go ahead and continue with our agenda, which starts with our general manager and CAO comments. Patrick.
All right, well, good evening, everybody. Happy May. So just a couple of quick items. We do not need a closed session tonight. We have no new information or need additional direction relative to the real property items. So there is no need for closed session tonight. I'm very happy to announce our office is 100% vaccinated for COVID, and our operations staff is at 83% vaccination rate, making for an overall 89% vaccination rate for the agency. So I think we're doing well in that aspect. And
Excellent. Yeah, that's the best I've heard.
Yeah, we're very happy. We had the last of our staff in the office start their vaccinations, and as well as a few people in the operations side. So that's great news. Just want to remind all of you, you probably all received a copy today of the response from last month's board meeting, the item related to the rate setting. We did receive an email response from Mayor Craig. So appreciate you following up with that. And with that concludes my remarks for tonight.
Thank you, Patrick. We're going to go ahead and see if we have any department manager comments at this point. Go ahead, Mandy. I see your hand up.
Thank you, President Lopez. Just a reminder that tire amnesty is currently still happening at all 3 of our facilities and will end at the end of this month on May 31st. And that will be our last tire amnesty event for probably quite some time until the fall. We'll do it again. But just as a reminder, if you have tires, please feel free to bring them in before the end of May for free. Thanks.
Thanks, Mandy. Any other department managers wish to make comments at this point? All right, not seeing any hands up. We'll go ahead and head into board director comments. Any board directors with comments or announcements this evening? I see Rob Collins hand up. Rob?
Yeah, I just wanted to announce that on April 24th, we did an Earth Day cleanup here in King City. It was through our organization, King City in Bloom, which my wife is I think she's the current chair of that group. And I just wanted to thank authority staff for bringing supplies down to King City so we could do that Earth Day cleanup. Went very well. It was nice to get out and clean some stuff up on Earth Day, or close to Earth Day anyway. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Rob. Anybody else? All right, not seeing any hands up. I'll make just a couple brief comments. Just want to share with you all, I know most of you know, but I unfortunately caught a case of Bell's palsy last week. And so I'm not a few drinks into the evening. It's just a little less control from my left side, but appreciate you all and your support. I've really enjoyed hearing from a lot of you. So thank you. Just know that I might sound a little funny, but don't worry. I'm all here and having fun catching up on this work with all of you. So thank you.
I think you
All right.
should be drinking. I mean, John Phillips makes no bones about the fact he's got a glass of red wine in his hand right now. I think you should too.
Now,
Yeah.
don't cheap shots, Mayor. You know,
That was Welch's there, Welch's. All right. Yeah, there you go. All right. So with that will wrap our board director comments and head into our public comment period. It's an opportunity for the public to share comments regarding items not on tonight's agenda. We'll go ahead and give 2 minutes per speaker and ask the public members who wish to address us to raise their hand. Seeing no hands going up, we'll go ahead and close the public comment, and I'll note that staff let me know before the meeting that none were received in writing either. So with that, we'll close our public comment period and open up our consent agenda. Is there any member of this board who wishes to pull an item from our consent agenda this evening? Okay, seeing none. Is there any member of the public who wishes to pull an item from this evening's consent agenda? Seeing no hands going up, I'll close the public comment, bring it back, and look for
Move
a motion to
approval of
move this.
consent. Craig?
Got a motion from Craig
Second it, Cromings.
and a second from Cromings. I'll go ahead and ask Rosie to give us a roll call, please.
Of course. Director Craig,
Yes.
Director Cullen,
Yes.
Director Jimenez,
Yes.
Director Phillips, Director Rocha,
Yes.
Director Silva,
Yes.
Alternate Vice President Tipton,
Yes.
Vice President Cromie,
Yes.
and President Lopez.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you very much. That takes us into our presentation portion of the agenda, which starts with the Amoresco landfill gas biogas utilization proposal. Patrick, I think you're going to do the intros for this one.
Yes, I will. Thank you, Mr. President. So we have in front of us a proposal, just so for a little background for those of you that aren't familiar with some of our operating agreements. Amoresco is a company that our agency hired many years ago to develop our first landfill gas to energy project at Johnson Canyon. And so that was done at a time when the markets and tax incentives and other incentives were available to support these projects, because they tend to be a little more expensive than conventional energy. Since that time, the landfill has obviously grown. We've taken a lot more material in. The amount of landfill gas being generated has more than doubled. And there is now what we call an increment of gas available to expand that plant by another 1.5 to 2 megawatts. Unfortunately, the current environment for these types of landfill gas to energy projects is not financially conducive to doing the same type of project where we generate electricity and sell it onto the grid without some additional incentives. And while the Central Coast Community Energy Group is working on such an incentive program, it does not appear that's anywhere in the near future at this point. And so Amoresco, we've provided them some notice that we'd like to see them do something with that increment of gas instead of just burning it off. And are prepared to send them what is required of us is a three-year notice that they basically have to use it or lose it. And so after several discussions, in looking at the current environment, which still does favor projects using biogas or landfill gas, they came back a few months ago and provided a new opportunity that we think has a lot of merit. So this is really just the starting of this project. They'd like to present that tonight and talk a little bit about the partnership. They have brought a partner in with them, Machado and Sons, who is interested in developing an anaerobic digestion system specific for agricultural culls. And so the lead-in of this is really culls have never been part of our landfill waste stream. Therefore, under the 1383 regulations that are all encompassing for our agency right now, diverting those to our compost facility does not provide us any regulatory benefit against those regulations. Those regulations are focused around diverting organics already going to the landfill. So having a supplemental project in the background that can make sure those culls do not come into our compost system, which is really designed for our 1383 compliance, would be greatly beneficial. So as part of this project, you'll hear all the details. I won't steal your thunder. But this would be a potential project where we would simply be a land leaser and provide some support service to Amoresco's partner in this project. Wouldn't have an investment or ownership in anything, but would be involved in flow direction of certain materials to that project. So with that, I'm going to start by introducing Jim Beer, who's the principal that we work with Amoresco. He's one of their project development managers, and we've been working with Jim since the original project. And I'll let him go ahead and introduce himself, Amoresco's role in the project, and then introduce you to Sean Kilgrove with Machado and Sons, who is the proposed partner on this project. And again, we're not asking for any board direction tonight. This is just an introduction to this project that still has a fair amount of work to go forward before there's any consideration of action, but we want to bring the board along with this as the project develops. So with that, Jim, all yours.
Patrick, can you hear me okay, Patrick?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you, Patrick, for that introduction, and thank you, President Lopez and other distinguished members of the board to allow us to present today. Well, I view this presentation as really building on what we've already done out at the Johnson Canyon landfill. And if you see the photo here, that is the flare station and some other facilities, but our landfill gas to electric plant that Patrick talked about is actually in that photo. So next slide. I thought it would be useful to really kind of take a step back and look at what we've done and then how we're going to build upon that. So these are some key dates for our landfill gas to electric project that is existing out at the Johnson Canyon landfill. So if you look at the first date there, from conception in September 2008 until we reached commercial operation, or COD, was May 2013. So that was a 5-year process. And I liken these projects to a marathon roller coaster ride with a lot of ups and downs along the way. And this project was no exception to that nomenclature. So if you look at when Amoresco submitted our proposal in November of 2008, and when we actually negotiated a fully negotiated gas purchase agreement, that was about 9 months. And that's, I think, fairly typical for these types of projects. They're not simple. And they have a lot of nuances that take a lot of time from a technical standpoint and also a legal standpoint. So after that, we started our due diligence. We came across a problem with the interconnection with PG&E, that the costs were not what we thought they were going to be. The interconnection costs were actually almost 3 times what we had originally budgeted. So we had to execute a gas purchase agreement amendment that allowed the project to proceed. So from December 2010 to May of 2013, I guess it's about 2.5 years, it took us to design, permit, and build the plant. So that's a little bit longer, but this than normal, but this is California, and California has some difficulties in permitting. So we've been successfully operating that plant since 2013. Patrick, I was going to go back and look, but ran out of time on the royalty payments that we've paid the authority over the last, I guess that would be 8 years. But it's a substantial amount of money, and it's been a beneficial project for both sides here. And then late last year, we were approached by Machado's and Sons, Sean Kilgroy from them, to consider teaming with them on a project that they've been looking at in Monterey County. And so Patrick talked a little bit about the excess gas being flared, and that's one of my pet peeves, that wasted energy does nobody any good. So it is something that we've been actively pursuing for when Patrick let us know that there was excess gas being flared. So next slide. And Patrick talked a little bit about what the wholesale renewable electric market is right now. It would not facilitate an expansion of that existing plant. So we are looking at a landfill gas to renewable natural gas, or RNG project. And this is a picture to the right of one of our renewable natural gas plants. This is one that's actually in San Antonio. It's a relatively small plant, and the one at the Johnson Canyon would be relatively small as well. We have a bigger footprint than we have today, but it's a lot of vessels, pipes, compressors, and things like that to remove all the impurities from the landfill gas and then inject it into a PG&E pipeline as renewable natural gas. So it's a very robust market at this time. Amoresco is probably working on at least 15 of these projects across the country. We're one of the main players in this space, and I think within the next 2 to 3 years, we will be the largest renewable natural gas producer from biogas in the United States. So there's really 3 sources of revenue associated with renewable natural gas. One of them is under a federal renewable fuel standard, and you can generate a green attribute called a RIN, which stands for Renewable Identification Number. Somebody was not very creative when they came up with the acronym. But today's market for RINs is very robust. That's the majority of the revenue you would get from this gas. And then in California, you have what's called a low carbon fuel standard, which is similar to the federal program, where it mandates a lot of the fuel users and the refineries and things like that to buy these renewable energy credits. So then lastly, the third source of revenue is the commodity, which is really just the brown molecules of methane. So with that, the price that you can get for this renewable natural gas is multiple times above what natural gas is selling for in today's market. So today it's a relatively lucrative market, but these projects typically need 20 years of revenue and financing to make sure that they are viable, and that's one of the challenges that we have ahead of us. So I talked a little bit about the interconnection with the electrical plant. We have similar challenges interconnecting with the natural gas grid in California through PG&E. They have the toughest quality standard in the nation. We are currently building 3 landfill gas to renewable natural gas plants in the state of California. So well versed in meeting that standard, but it's not easy and it's not cheap. The distance to the pipeline, the PG&E existing natural gas pipeline, is not close. As a crow flies, it's about 3 miles away. but that would necessitate going through the downtown area of City of Gonzales, which is not desirable. So we probably have to skirt the outside of it. So that pipeline would be longer than the 3 miles. And then in California, and working with California utilities, the interconnection costs are fairly high. And we have a pretty good handle on that from our other projects that we're working on in California. So I think our budget for that is pretty spot on. But again, these projects are challenging. What's next bullet, please? So the other thing that is challenging for this project is the economies of scale. The landfills that we are working on in California are probably 3 to 4 times the amount of gas that we are currently flaring at Johnson Canyon. So there are some challenges associated with economies of scale. Next bullet. And this is really where Machado and Son comes in, that combining the biogas that's generated from an anaerobic digester that will be co-located on the Johnson Canyon facility helps out with the economies of scale. So that's something that when we were approached by Machado and Son, we were very interested in. So we have been talking to them for, I guess, 5 to 6 months now. And then last bullet, please, on there. I think there's one more. Nope, it's the next one. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Sean Kilgroy and allow him to introduce himself, and then talk about how he's going to generate the biogas that we will combine with the landfill gas to make a larger project. So with that, Sean, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. You hear me okay?
I can.
Okay. A little bit about the company before I dive into the project. Machado and Sons is traditionally a site civil type company. We've done work in solar. Our primary customer is PG&E. I do a lot of work up and down their service territory. I met Machado and Sons when I worked at Granite Construction. I was one of the original guys in at Granite for the renewable energy division. And they were a subcontractor to me, got to know them real well, great family run company. And when this opportunity came up and we talked through it, we saw that, 1383 was emerging. And even though this project doesn't relate directly to 1383, it does in an indirect manner. And we've attacked that market pretty head on. We are developing a compost site in Modesto and have other anaerobic digestion projects in development up and down really the Central Valley. Next slide, please. And this is the introduction to one of those projects. So we're calling this Salinas Valley Biogas. Next slide. The beginning of this was when I met with Taylor Farms, and we met at a Cal Recycle symposium. I have a background in anaerobic digestion going back years ago when the market was much more challenged than it is today with the LCFS credits. And we met with their sustainability group, and they presented me with this issue of the coals that they have to deal with. Next bullet, please. And when we looked at that, my first question was, well, do coals digest in a way that is going to be economically feasible? So we built the little test plant you see at the bottom there, and lo and behold, we got enough gas that we thought that it would be an economical to scale that plant. Next slide, next bullet. And what we did is we found a property in unincorporated Monterey County that we ran a full permit, full survey, geotech, did the whole thing, submitted to Monterey County with an in-vessel digestion plan. And just like Amoresco, we pumped into PG&E at that point, and the interconnection costs were just too high, and the reach of the pipeline was too far, 3 miles from the site. So we had to abandon that site, and that's when we approached Amoresco. Next bullet, please. So we did before we approached Amoresco, we did combine forces with a Austrian experienced anaerobic digestion technology provider. Their name is Biogest, and they've been great. They helped us with the permit application and the in-vessel digestion plan. You really can't do one of those without a technology behind you. So we've built a team around this project, starting with Biogest and now sort of completing that with Amoresco, that we think is going to be a winning combination. Next slide. And here's what we've proposed to not only Patrick but Jim. There's a site there just north and a little bit west of the landfill proper that is just about ideal for what we're trying to do. Next bullet. With the amount of feedstock we have, which is 300 tons a day, it's under contract, which represents, by the way, about a quarter of what's available in the valley. Those two digesters you see there highlighted are what would handle that amount of feedstock. Next bullet. But we can also expand. There's enough room there. We went out and looked at it here recently, where the sort of the watermark you see there could be a third tank to include an expanded feedstock flow. And just to give you a sense, each one of those tanks there is about 1.5 million gallons. So it's a pretty large tank. Call that 100 feet in diameter, 20 feet tall. So it's a robust, fairly large facility, but it's certainly within the bandwidth of the technology that we're bringing to bear here. Next bullet. One of the things we are running into is the amount of digestate that would come out of this, and that's about 70 to 80,000 gallons a day of digestate. If you can imagine, that's 2% solids type liquid. Portion of that would go to the compost facility at Johnson Canyon landfill, and the rest of it we're looking for options. They're regenerative farming options, carbon sequestration in the soil. We've actually engaged UC Merced to help us quantify what sort of carbon can actually be sequestered in the soil. But I see that as one of the hurdles we have yet to sort of check the box on, but I don't think it's a fatal flaw by any stretch. Next bullet. And the 1383, as I mentioned, it's not a direct compliance because coals are not diverted from the landfill, although those coals would not see the infrastructure that you've built to handle 1383 diverted waste. So that's the real benefit here to the landfill and to the region as a whole. Next slide. Oh, yes, and this also, as you'll see on the next slide, is the layout we have here, and the area we're proposing to lease includes not only the anaerobic digestion, but also solar thermal to maintain the heat balance in those digesters, which is a key to maintaining optimal anaerobic digestion, and then 0.5 megawatt of solar to help power the pumps and the infrastructure at the digestion site. Next slide. And you can go through the first couple of bullets, please, for me on this. Really, the key to this slide is that there is room, and it is very appropriate for the application we're trying to accommodate here. So that the square feet you see there fit very well with the amount of thermal load we have, the amount of electrical load, and then the larger square you see, the 111,000 square feet of area fits perfectly for the 3 digesters that we're proposing. So it's the site itself we couldn't ask for much more for it being an ideal site for this location. Next bullet. And here's where we are to date with this. We've been working on this for a little over 2 years now. We do have feedstock LOIs in place with Taylor Farm for that 300 tons a day. And we have been approached by more than one finance group, and the one group out of Europe has agreed to, if we check their boxes, that they've agreed to provide financing for this project. Next bullet. We have an advanced design. This isn't as complicated as what a landfill gas to electricity project would be, simply because we'll be providing the raw biogas to Amoresco. So it makes it much easier, the design. But the tank design, we think we've checked the box on the latest and greatest seismic requirements, which are high in this area. The heat and electrical load are modeled and will be satisfied by the solar thermal and solar that I've just showed you. And the detailed design and permitting effort they are on hold, but once we have this site, sort of an agreement to move forward here, at least a blessing from this group, then we can move forward with a full permitting effort. Next bullet. The other thing that is important, and from a financing development perspective, Jim mentioned in the beginning, is we've got to dial in our subcontractor and equipment quotes, and that has happened, and we've taken that to a fairly advanced state. We CARB and CalRecycle are both aware of our project. We've met with the Monterey County Air Board. We see no fatal flaws from a permitting perspective, which is, with these type of projects, that is one of the potential fatal flaws. And we think that, based on the feedback we've received from those agencies, that there shouldn't be any problems with that. Next bullet. So, as I mentioned, this does provide the county the ability to continue with 1383 compliance with your existing waste stream. Water is always a problem in Monterey County, as I'm sure you all know, and we will provide enough water to maintain that compost system that's existing. For the county, this would be a long-term lease. Like Jim mentioned, we'd need 20 years to pay this project off, and the regional benefit to handling or a majority of the coals that come out of the valley is not only good for the environment, the region, but also, be able to create biogas out of that fits in line with I think the renewable energy goals of the state. Next slide. And this is sort of a repeat of what we've discussed, but I think that instead of trying to build or permit additional infrastructure to deal with this waste stream, the 400 tons a year that do come out of that valley, this is a very appropriate application for that waste stream. So I hope I've left some time for questions, and if anybody has any, I'd be happy to answer them. But yeah, I'm sorry. The regional coals here, as I mentioned, 100% of that would be avoided. The landfill would avoid that material, which I think would be a great benefit. Okay, that's all I have. So thank you very much. I appreciate everyone's time.
Yeah, and just wrap up here, I think on the very last slide, I want to, again, talk about that we're building on the successes that we've had with the authority over the last decade. And this is really expanding our presence and expanding our relationship with the authority. And we look forward to it. I started off this presentation with a reference to a marathon roller coaster ride. I don't think this project will be any different. Hopefully it won't take 5 years. I don't think that it will, like the previous one, just because we know each other a lot better. And but I do want to warn the folks on this phone call that this is a marathon roller coaster ride, and that today we are closer to the start than we are to the finish. But Amoresco and our team and our partnership with Machado, I think is the right team to bring this project to fruition. And I look forward to working with Patrick and his staff and the members of the board in bringing this project to fruition. So again, I welcome questions as well.
Thank you, Sean and James. I'm going to see Patrick. Any other thoughts for us before we go to the board? You're on mute there, Patrick.
Yeah, just one last thought, and this does have to do with the city of Gonzales, as many of you know, is deep in development of a microgrid. I participated or listened in on a webinar today put on by the local government Energy Sustainability Coalition, and really it was all about the Gonzales project, and they continue to identify the landfill gas, biogas as a possible future source for some of their energy needs in their expanded business park. So we are keeping that in mind. And if the pricing works out to allow this project to go forward, we definitely will be encouraging both Jim and Sean to at least consider that as another alternative for that energy output. So we're trying to keep all of our options open for how to deal with the biogas and landfill gas coming off this project.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. I'm going to open it up for director comments or questions. I see a hand up from Supervisor Director Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this is an exciting project, and it's something that's really needed, especially with the dairies that we had for years and years here in this county that are down to 1 or 1.5 now. I know we have Taylor Farms and a couple other produce companies down there in Gonzales, but what's our capacity? Will we have capacity? I mean, we have Diorigo, we have Ocean Mist, we have TNA. Would be able to consume the calls from around the county, or is it going to be limited to in capacity?
I could try to answer that with what I showed you on the current design are 2 of the tanks, so 3.2 million gallons, would be able to accommodate all the Taylor coals, plus a few more thousand tons a year from another one of the producers. If we built the 3rd tank, that would take another 30,000 or more tons a year out of the waste stream flow from Dole or Fresh Express.
So to answer your question, John, no, we're space constrained. So this project is being considered within the limited available land we have on the property. It's not to say that there could not be a 2nd or a 3rd plant if the economies work out, placed in another location. But this plant, and we don't know because of the proprietary nature of coal generation within the various businesses. We're guessing somewhere in excess of 250, 300 tons a year, actually more than our landfill waste stream in culls being produced in the county, but that is a back of the napkin guess. It's not based on hard data from any of these companies. So were this to be the chosen method for all culls in our county, just to convert them to biogas, there would definitely need to be additional plants. But we're not thinking that all the culls are all of a sudden going to come back into Monterey County. There's still going to be a demand for cattle feed at some level, but we do see that waning in those culls now, and processors like Taylor looking for local options.
Yeah. All right. That's good. Bottom line is we need this, and it's a good start.
Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Director Silva.
Yeah, my comments were very much in line with Judge Phillips, and just realizing the local need for Taylor, Del Monte, Braga, Missionero, Diorigo, and the company I work for is Ippolito International. It would be a constant stream of culls, and it's a long time coming. I used to work at Fresh Express, and I know the quantity of culls that come out of a facility that manufactures the ready-to-eat products. So I look forward to a successful end to all the culls out there. Thank you.
Director Cullen.
Just wanted to direct a question to General Manager and/or our legal counsel. It would be good for us to have a discussion surrounding risk to the authority. What areas would we retain risk? What areas would we not face risk?
Well, just in a broad sense, this project is primarily we're the land leaser, we're the lessor. So the risk is going to be minimal. Most of these projects that we've entertained over the years, our first focus is always to minimize authority risk. We're not looking at authority investment, ownership, and technology that's being borne by the private sector partners. And so just as we are with our agreement with Amoresco, we lease the land. They have responsibility liability for all the operations within that leased parcel of land on Johnson Canyon. And we really don't retain a lot of risk. But we'd have to look at the specific areas around permits and joint use and those kind of things. But I think in this case, our risk would be relatively low. But Michelle, maybe you can speak to this from the legal perspective.
From a legal perspective, from what I know on this project, I would have to agree with you. I would really think this is something that Roy probably has much more depth of knowledge than I do, since I'm just stepping in, unfortunately filling in for him tonight, but I definitely can look into that.
And Patrick, if I can respond to that, we have an existing agreement, a gas purchase agreement, that this is really was thought of, that there would be additional gas at some point. We really didn't think about anaerobic digestion back in 2008 when we were looking at this contract. But under the existing terms, Amoresco is responsible for all the capital and all the operating costs associated with installing this project. And we would propose not to change any of those terms, and that we would pay the authority for that excess gas that's being flared right now. And then we would pay an additional lease payment for the additional land that we would need for the renewable natural gas project, but also for the anaerobic digestion. So there are the agreement, I think we can work within that framework. Obviously, there need to be some sort of expansion amendment associated with that existing agreement. But I think most of the risk associated with capital and operating costs, and actually even permitting and environmental operating issues, are pretty well addressed in there. I think we did think of those over a decade ago. So I haven't read that agreement in some time, but maybe I should read that and maybe fully understand any issues that this additional anaerobic digestion could pose to the project.
Any follow-up questions, Director Cullen?
No, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. I just wanted to share a brief comment, having been on the county side of many conversations around what happens with coals. I guess my caution would be just do everything you can to make sure they're as clean as possible when they come in. I know all too often folks thought they were going to get clean coals, and I've been out to some fields where it's half rubber gloves and half coals, just depending on the transition happening within a particular facility. And so just give that caution that, figuring out an early process to make sure trash doesn't end up in that stream. Obviously, you've got a great partner in us if we get that far down the road to help educate, but making sure that that's consistent will be critical to the long-term success of any project.
I'm sure Mandy and all of her outreach staff heard that.
Yes, resources. All right. Any other comments or questions from directors? Seeing no hands up, I'm going to take it out to the public and see if we have any public input on this presentation. Seeing no hands up, we'll close the public comment. And this is just an informational item, so thank you both for the presentation. Do you need any additional direction this evening, Patrick?
No, we'll bring this back at the appropriate time when the two partners have moved this project to a point where we need to begin to make decisions. So it'll probably be a few months out at least.
Great. Well, James and Sean, thank you for spending your evening with us, helping to share some information on your project. We wish you success and we look forward to seeing you back here.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you, gentlemen. We're going to head into item 10, which is an update on SB 1383, our favorite unfunded mandate. Sorry, Mandy, had to take my shot. The floor is yours.
Shot taken and received, not a problem. Good evening, President Lopez, members of the board. This is a nice actual segue from the presentation you just saw, because I'll be giving an update on our SB 1383 organics recycling programs and some headway that we've made. So next slide, please. So we've been very busy over the last several months planning and implementing pilot projects to help meet that 1383 mandate. Program reports for each of our member agencies were completed in October of last year, but shortly after that, we were informed by CalRecycle that our planning reports actually needed to be updated, and that was just recently completed in April of this year. To assist with that revised planning requirements, SES Engineers, who is the same consultant that helped us actually develop all of our 1383 planning reports, provided a proposal for organics technology review for various anaerobic digestion technologies, which we just heard about from the presentation, that would potentially be available to the authority to look at and pursue. And similar to the presentation you just heard, this is actually would augment our existing composting facility, which we all know is capped at the 75,000 tons per year. Last month as well, the board approved the formation of the 1383 Technical Advisory Committee, and that's the TAC. Each of the cities and the county, all of the franchised haulers, Monterey Regional Waste Management District, and CalRecycle have all appointed representatives to join the committee. And our first meeting is scheduled for next Wednesday. In addition, in order to maintain our 1383 program timeline, I don't know if you all remember, but I do, there's 152 tasks we have to complete. The board also approved last month the agreement with Action Research, and that's for a community-based social marketing project, which is related all to our new organics recycling programs. And then we've also started pilot commercial food waste programs in 2 of our South County cities. So the member agencies' 1383 program planning reports were updated to now include biosolid tonnage or sewer sludge into the overall organics disposal numbers, which were not included in the previous reports. So currently biosolids are used as alternative daily cover at the landfill, and that practice will need to change. Additionally, the reports now reflect the inclusion of 100% organics capacity requirement, not the 75% that we originally used for our calculations. So 1383 states that jurisdictions must have a guarantee that 100% of the estimated organics, including biosolids disposed of in a landfill, must have a contract or a plan for proper recycling, composting, or reuse. And again, each member agency received those revised reports to reflect these changes back in April. Next slide. So while each of our member agencies' diversion tonnages, obviously requirements will vary, the overall changes for our regional diversion totals are an increase of approximately 25,000 tons or a little over 30,000 tons, including those biosolids. So by 2025, our jurisdictions need to have organics capacity or have a plan to process approximately close to 75,000 tons of organics, or a little over 80,000 tons if we're including those biosolids as well. Next slide. So the initial pilot commercial food waste collection program started in December of 2020, and Greenfield was our first city to participate with Tri-Cities Disposal, collecting from about 7 customers. Waste Management in King City then initiated their pilot program, and that began in February of this year. Our agency assisted the haulers with virtual outreach and education by providing online training videos for those customers that were participating. And of course, socially distanced dropped off internal food waste collection bins and compostable bags, or what we call bio bags, for lining those bins. And the food collected is delivered to our composting facility at Johnson Canyon. So this pilot program is actually brand new for all 4 of the parties that you see here listed, and obviously will require some tweaking as we move forward to full implementation. But I will say that this is very exciting and is the first step in all of our jurisdictions reaching compliance with 1383. So Greenfield, thank you, Greenfield, volunteered to be our first South County city to start this commercial food waste pilot program. To reduce initial costs of the pilot, Tri-Cities Disposal is commingling the commercial food waste collected in with their existing yard waste routes, which allows the use of existing trucks and drivers, keeping costs low. Tri-Cities is also offering the commercial food waste pilot to customers for free at no additional cost until July 1st, which is when annual rate increases would normally take effect. So between Tri-Cities Disposal and our agency, we've provided, again, the virtual outreach and education. We've also created brand new brochures. I mentioned the training videos that we created. We've provided internal organics collection bins, the compostable bags, bio bags, which are the green bags you see here in the pictures, and that's to eliminate any plastic bags being used. So the pictures here are actually the very first load of food waste that was accepted from the 7 customers in Greenfield. This is the highlight of my job. I get to run out to Johnson Canyon and take pictures of garbage and food waste. But the 7 customers did an amazing job, especially with very little, I don't want to say human contact, but the virtual outreach and education. We weren't sure how that was going to go. They kept it super clean. There were no plastic bags and no trash in the load, which was very encouraging to see. Next slide, please. So similar to Greenfield, as I mentioned, King City began their pilot in February and is offering the same free service through July 1st. And these, again, are pictures of their food waste that the King City customers participated with. The load is also extremely clean, no trash, only contained the green bio bags that I mentioned, and no plastic bags. Plastic bags are a big no-no in the compost. They don't biodegrade ever, and they just end up contaminating the end product, which is actually ends up ruining it. So next slide. So total current commercial food waste customers for our area, total service area is 173. This does not include any of our depackager customers. This is just focusing on the commercial source food waste. And while Greenfield was the first South County city to start the pilot, all 3 of the Tri-Cities are now participating and have a total of 17 customers signed up. Again, King City has 8. And Salinas is a little different. So since 2013, Salinas and Republic Services have had a source separated commercial food waste program. So they do not collect the food mixed in with the yard waste. They just collect straight food waste in a truck. Republic has been taking that food to the Monterey Regional Waste Management District's anaerobic digester for several years, but that facility has now closed. So since May of this year, the food has now been redirected to our composting facility, where it is first run through our depackager facility to remove any contamination that might exist, and then mixed in with our compost. And then the county also has 5 customers, but is planning to expand the program this year, focusing on our service area, right? They've been focusing a lot on the peninsula service area, and that's to reach their 1383 as well as their 1826 compliance. So the majority of who's participating in the commercial food waste program for our service area are fast food restaurants. And now that in-person restaurants are now opening back up, they're starting to join coffee shops, markets, small grocery stores, bakeries, things of that nature. We're hoping that once we're able to open back up after COVID, that we have several more customers that are able to join. And the next slide is just, if you have comments or questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. All right, any questions from directors? Shy bunch tonight. We'll take it out, see if we have any public comment on this presentation. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment, bring it back. Director Phillips.
Yeah, thank you, Mandy, for your presentation. As always, it was good. I love King City and Greenfield and everything. What are we doing in North County? Are we got any pilot projects up here?
Yes, actually, I believe there are. I think the 5 customers I mentioned are the ones that are actually in North County.
Okay.
So
yeah, we got to reach out to all the
I lucked out. Okay.
Yeah, but we do have to reach out to make sure our community is getting involved in it, because it's a great program, great project that we need, obviously. So anything I can do to help push that along up here, you let me know. So thank you.
Thank you.
I just heard volunteer to join your social media campaign there, Mandy. John's got a great presence up in North County, so let's make sure we get him any online collateral to share that out in the community.
Absolutely. Great idea. Thank you.
Any other directors? I did see a hand pop up late, so I'm going to go out and give Kristen Scromey from Waste Management an opportunity to share a comment with us.
Hi everyone, Kristen Scromey here from Waste Management. I just wanted to answer the question that came up from Supervisor Phillips. We are actually conducting a large mailing to all of our North County customers at the end of May. And we kind of separated out our mailings in smaller chunks so that we weren't overwhelmed with the response to add food waste collection all at once. So North County is our next mailing. And then once we get through all the outreach, contacting customers in North County, we're going to move our way down Salinas Valley, working all the way down to South County. So that's our strategy to get folks into compliance. And we're going to be using existing green waste routes to collect the food waste material in both North County and South County. So no additional resources are needed, and it's a great program so far. So we hope to report back a lot more progress at the next couple of board meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. John, I see your hand up again.
No, I took it down. I like the idea of starting in north and moving south, though. So yeah, thank you.
Squeaky wheel there, John. Squeaky wheel. All right. Not seeing any other hands up. I'm going to ask Mandy, do you need any further direction from the board this evening?
It was just informational.
Great. Thank you. All right.
Thank
Then
you.
we'll go ahead and consider item 10 wrapped up and head into number 11, the Johnson Canyon Landfill Development Update. And we're going to kick that over to Brian Kennedy.
Good evening, President Lopez and board members. My name is Brian Kennedy. I'm the Engineering and Environmental Compliance Manager here at the Authority. And tonight we're going to talk about the Johnson Canyon Landfill Development. Next slide, please. So some historical milestones worth noting. The Johnson Canyon Landfill was opened in 1976 by Monterey County as an alternative to the dumping along the Salinas River. The Authority purchased the landfill from the county in 1997. And in 2002, Johnson Canyon landfill expansion and alternatives was thoroughly studied by the Regional Solid Waste Facilities Environmental Impact Report. That's that huge EIR. And by 2007, the decision regarding the future size of the landfill was made, and a conditional use permit was issued by Monterey County that identified a limited landfill expansion and incorporated many of the findings and mitigations identified in the EIR. The Authority assumed operational control of the landfill in 2014. Next slide, please. So here's opening day, not quite AT&T Park, but this is the first material being brought in landfill in July of 1976. Next slide, please. So this is how we were landfilling in 1976. It was basically, I think they called them burrito fills back then. You would just bulldoze out some troughs and fill the waste in there, and we would cover it. Next slide, please. So in a contrast, this is a picture from our last module we built, which is module 7 in 2019. And you can see quite a bit of difference there as far as the environmental protection. Next slide. So modern landfill design are designed to, with many features to prevent environmental degradation. Leachate, which is liquid that comes in contact with garbage, is protected from, or prohibited from going into the environment. There's a multi-layer baseliner which is used to prevent this leakage, and the collection system with pumps that remove the leachate. When the landfill is closed, a similar liner system is constructed on the top of the landfill to keep water out and prevent landfill gas from escaping into the atmosphere. In the case of Johnson Canyon, this gas, as you heard earlier, is used to generate electricity, as well as some of it now is still being flared off. Next slide, please. So one of the things we want to talk about tonight is the master plan. The master plan is a document that examines the short, medium, and long-term goals of the site including modular design and sequencing, stormwater controls, and site closure design and timelines. Geologic Associates was retained to develop our latest master plan a couple of years ago, and the final plan is included in your board packet today. Johnson Canyon has had 2 previous master plans in 1986 and 2004. So master plans, are typically done every decade or so. They're not required, but sites use them for planning purposes primarily. And you initiate them when you have different circumstances, different waste streams, different objectives. Next slide, please. So the objectives we gave to Geologic this time around were threefold. We wanted to maximize the lifespan of the landfill within the current allowed site constraints, develop a plan for managing the excess soil on site, and develop a preliminary closure plan. Next slide, please. So the constraints on landfill capacity include the proximity to the property boundary, the height restrictions agreed to in the conditional use permit in 2007, and actually the weight of the waste on top of the leachate collection pipes themselves. Next slide, please. So some highlights from this year's master plan. Development plan shows 3 remaining landfill modules for a total of 10. This is the same as we had previously. They're just a little bit larger. And then we maximize the footprint of the landfill, which extends the life of the landfill. The design also added more contours to the final top deck to facilitate stormwater drainage and make the closed landfill fit in better with the surrounding landscape. However, the increase in capacity resulted in a whopping 2.6 million cubic yards of soil that needed to be managed. So the good news is Geologic came up with a plan to manage that soil. Next slide, please. So as far as the module construction timeline going forward, we created or finished Module 7 last year, or 2 years ago, actually, in 2019. Module 8 is estimated in 2030, Module 9, 2040, and 2050 for Module 10. And again, these are estimates based on current disposal rates. Next slide, please. So here's a design of the final map of the landfill after it's filled and closed. So the waste limits on the north, the south, and the west are much closer to the property boundaries, which are allowed than previous plans. And then the top deck is a lot more contoured, a lot more, again, fit in with the surrounding landscape much better after closure. Next slide. So now we have the issue of the soil challenge. We have 2.6 million cubic yards of dirt, and we have to manage this. We can't stockpile it on site. There's no place to put it. And if you shipped it off site, it'd be very expensive. So we look towards our closure plan. Next slide. So landfills are closed as a regulatory requirement. The idea is to isolate the waste from the environment to reduce water infiltration, manage gas and stormwater. And the site must be managed for 30 years plus after it's closed. Next slide. So a traditional closure method is not that much different from a baseliner system. It usually has a synthetic liner, drainage layers, hydraulic barriers, again, all designed to keep water out of the landfill. Next slide. So here's a picture of the closure of Crazy Horse Landfill and what it looked like with the synthetic liner before we put the closure turf on top of it. So this is pretty typical of a closure of a landfill. Next slide. So the regulations allow for what they call an engineered alternative to the standard closure design, and Geologic came up with what's known as an evapotranspirative or an ET cover system. So this design uses 4.5 feet of just soil on top of the landfill, and the idea is the stormwater is absorbed by the topsoil and it'll evaporate before it penetrates the soil layer before it can get into the garbage. Next slide, please. So this is the same system we used when we closed Salone Road in 2007. These ET covers are gaining popularity, but they really only work well in arid and semi-arid locations. If it's a wet location, they don't function as well and usually don't get approval from the regulatory agencies. Next slide. So one of the great benefit of the ET cover is the cost over traditional cover systems. You know, the estimate, over the previous closure cost estimate, we've saved over $8 million. We haven't saved it because we haven't spent it, but the estimate's $8 million less with the ET cover over the traditional cover system. Next slide, please. So the plan is to use the excavated soils from the future modules to close sections of the landfill as we go along. This is called rolling closure. It gives us the benefit of the environmental protections that closure provides long before a traditional closure would, and plus it allows us to manage our soil on site rather than having to export them or stockpile them on site. So this ET design has been approved by the water board, and we're waiting for final approval of the closure plan documents to actually begin potentially starting this process this summer. And next slide, that's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Brian. I see a hand up from Rob. Rob, floor is yours.
First off, thank you, Brian. That was good information. Interesting to see all of that. I mean, we've seen bits and pieces at a time, but to have it all in one spot, that was interesting. I'm curious on that. A couple questions related to those estimated closure costs. One is that in terms of today's dollars, future dollars? You know, kind of thinking about what exactly those numbers represent. And then, man, that's a huge delta between the ET method and I guess the traditional method, if you will. Why is it such a big difference?
Well, the synthetic liner, like the system you saw from Crazy Horse, the materials are expensive. Preparing the subgrades very expensive. Putting in the drainage layers, I mean, the materials alone are really expensive. Plus, you would likely do that all at one time, and there'd be a major construction operation. And so a lot of CQA costs, doing the rolling closures, we call it, we're basically getting our design plan approved now that we're going to be using for the next 40 plus years. So there's savings in that. And back to the cost estimates, we estimate them every 5 years, and they're based on current dollars. Those numbers will change, and all this will change. I mean, we got quite a bit of lifespan left. This plan going forward will be used as a blueprint, but the numbers and the disposal rates, the disposal types, these things are dynamic. So to now, today, 2021, this is how it looks. How it looks, in 30 years from now, I probably won't be speaking to that.
Great, thank you.
Director Phillips.
Nor will I. But it's very interesting. So I guess my one concern is, will they approve this? I can see the advantage of a vapor barrier or a barrier, but are we sure this will be approved? But it certainly makes sense to close it incrementally versus having a huge big project. But can you at least address those issues, please?
Yeah, so the water board, the Water Quality Control Board, really is the agency that determines the water quality environmental impacts, and they have approved the ET cover portion of it. We've sent them, or GLA has done all the engineering, and that part of it has been approved, tentatively approved. The actual design, the closure project design, is with the water board currently, and we expect approval from that in the next 30 days, perhaps. So the answer is the using soil as the cover versus a traditional method. The engineered alternative has been approved. The actual closure documents haven't yet, but we anticipate that. And as far as from the water board's perspective, having a closure sooner than later is something that really they really want us to do, especially considering Module 1, as you saw how the garbage was placed. The older sections of our landfill, they are very interested in us closing those to get the benefits of closure rather than waiting 30, 40, 50 years.
All right. Thank you. Good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Phillips. Patrick?
Yeah, I just want to add one thing to this too. The beauty of this system, you pick up soil when you're excavating a new module and you go put it in a stockpile. It sits there, and then you got to pick it up from that stockpile and move it to your cover activities or some interim covering that happens in an active landfill. The beauty of this is, as Brian said, we start closing the older landfill sections that aren't as well protecting the environment. The original module has no liner. The one you saw in the photo, the next one just has clay, and then our subsequent ones have the multi-layered system. So closing these as we go is definitely supported by the regional board. It reduces the long-term environmental impacts, but we kill two birds with one stone. We excavate the landfill, we take that soil, instead of putting it in a stockpile, we place it right on the slope of those phased covers. So if you look closely at that map, you'll see that there are planned closure, phased rolling closures that will happen over the next 40 years. And they'll coincide with the construction of each of the next module. So the beauty is we're killing two birds with one stone, because we have to pay for excavating the landfill when we build the new cell anyway. So there's a benefit. We have two funding options, both the closure money and then benefiting from the money that's being used for development of the new landfill cell. So this is, for me, at least, when I saw the proposal, it seemed like a no-brainer for us.
Yeah,
Great.
makes complete sense. Yeah.
The finance manager liked it too, actually. Just to put that 2 cents in.
I was waiting for that.
I know we hadn't heard from Ray tonight. It was kind of quiet out there.
So now we heard from him. Yeah.
Now you know I'm actually here.
There we go. And you're not upside down, so that's a double benefit tonight. All right, then I'm going to take this out to the public, see if we have any public input on this item. See no hands going up. I'll close the public comment. And at this point, I believe that was just a presentation. So thank you, Brian. Anything else you need from us tonight?
Nope. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much. With that, we'll head into item 12, which is a resolution approving amendment number 3 to the lease with Nexus Partners and Friedrich Family Limited Partnership, authorizing a 2 or 3 year extension to the lease for 128 Sun Street. And we'll kick that over to Patrick.
All right, I'll make this fairly quick. We reached out to both our real estate agent and as well as the landlord, or landlord's representative. And I think as we say in the letter, their concern is they don't want to see us delay this decision much longer, simply because they need time to market the property. The second part of this, and this is really where I feel we really need to act tonight. And we had this discussion with the executive committee, and that is that the property is actively on the market. In fact, there was a walkthrough with a potential buyer scheduled for this week, but it has been canceled and rescheduled for a later date. Our concern is obviously that we don't know who that buyer will be, whether it's an investor that just wants to, lease the office and make revenue, or whether it's someone that has a business interest and has a desire to work the leases out and take possession of the entire building complex. So those are unknowns that we're facing. So after having a lengthy discussion with this and actually talking with city staff as well, we came to the agreement that a 2-year lease, I believe the executive committee supports that recommendation, that we go forward with a 2-year lease. That puts us on a pretty tight timeline to begin to look at the options for our next move. And my hope and our agency staff plan is we only want to move one more time. But I think not acting on the lease at this point, with it being on the market, we run the risk of something untoward happening, and all of a sudden we're on a short time frame to get out of here by the end of the year. So with that, I would recommend the board adopt a 2-year lease. So the executive committee did want to leave the option open for discussing a 3-year lease as well, but I'll leave that up to the executive committee and board to decide if they want to deliberate on that. But we certainly would support moving forward with the 2-year.
Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, just in terms of, the conversation at EC, I think there was strong support for 2 years and some conversation about 3, but definitely a desire to lock into at this point. So at this point, I do want to open it up and see if there's additional input from directors. I see a hand up from Director Rocha. We'll start with you.
I just want to thank Patrick and all of you for being so so willing to work with us on this. I think it's a great, I understand your arguments, Patrick, and I absolutely agree with you. And I'd like to move for us to go forward to the 2-year lease. That works for me as a councilman for the city, and I think it's good for the organization.
And I'd like to second that.
Got a motion and a second. We'll keep conversation going. I still see hands up, so I've got a motion from Rocha, a second from Cromings, but at this point, I'll take it over to Supervisor Director Phillips.
Yeah, I support the 2-year too, but no matter what, whether we move that Sun Street out like we want to do and anything else we do, we're going to need time to move that. And with all the things going on there, 2 years makes sense. So I'll support the motion when the time comes.
Great. Thank you, Director Phillips. Any other directors at this point? Seeing no hands, I'll take it out and see if we have any public input on this item. Seeing no hands, I'll bring it back and go ahead and ask for a roll call vote.
Okay. Director Craig?
Yes.
Director Cullen?
Aye.
Director Jimenez?
Aye.
Director Phillips?
Aye.
Director Rocha?
Yes.
Director Silva?
Aye.
Alternate Vice President Tipton?
Aye.
Vice President Cromings?
Yes.
President Lopez?
Aye. All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. With that, we have wrapped item 12, and we're going to have our agenda item view ahead scheduled next, and I believe Patrick's going to take us through that.
All right. Bring that up. Great. So again, typical June, we have a few contract renewals to start the new fiscal year coming forward for various services that we provide the public. We'll continue our monthly updates, and as necessary, we'll bring the relocation and city notice of withdrawal forward. I do hope, based on our conversations this week with Republic Services and Jim Pia with city staff, we're shooting to hopefully have the letter of intent with Republic, or at least the draft we can agree on, brought back to the board in August. So that's our tentative goal, to have that come back in front of the board after our July recess. You could scroll up a little bit, please. We'll have a food waste recycling award. One of the things that we haven't done for a while is really to just go back and review the philosophies we've been following around sustainable financing and rate setting for solid waste agencies. It's not as simple as we just charge what we charge. There's a lot of different approaches to how you create a financially sustainable agency with the way you budget, finance, and set your rates. So Ray will be providing a presentation on the things that we've actually been doing over the last 8-9 years to move the agency in a little bit different direction in terms of how we, and you've heard a lot of this in bits and pieces. This is really just sort of a short compilation of what we're doing. Board policy updates, that actually is an item that's just going to be with the executive committee to get some guidance. One of the things we don't have actually is a formal set of board policies. So we'd like to sort of get a little guidance on that and hopefully bring that back to the full board at a later meeting, but that will be an executive committee item only. So with that, any questions, any suggestions, additions you'd like to see to the June or August agendas?
Any input from directors?
I actually had a completely random question, but it came up in my Facebook memories, Patrick. And so I'm wondering, just because I've been off of the board for a couple of years, I know that we had a juggler that usually has a 3-year contract. We last approved it in 2018 for like educating at kids level, you know, like elementary schools and whatnot. And we've traditionally in years past approved that at a May board meeting. And I'm just wondering, is that contract still in effect, or what what's the story there with that one?
I'll give you a quick answer and let Mandy fill in the details. That item, if you can scroll down a little bit, Rosie, that is part of the school assembly program amendment. But we're looking at a mix-up this year of bringing in a second type of school performance. So it would be a combination of both the juggler at a reduced contract amount and another performance group that works in a lot of solid waste agencies, EcoHero. And so there'll be that is the school assembly program amendment on the consent agenda there.
Okay, great. I appreciate the clarification on that. I thought that is a very wise performance artist who has a government contract for $50K a year. So yeah, I was just curious to know where that landed or if we were still engaged there. So I'll look forward to that. Thank you.
And if it's the one I'm thinking of, I just want to be clear, there's no relation there. I think we share a name. If it's the same guy that the county has his contract with, and I get ringed for it every year asking if I'm making an extra $50K a year as a juggler, it is not the same Chris Lopez. So thank you all.
Well, I bet his job is a lot easier for a third of the money. So you may want to consider getting into juggling.
Well, I've got to say, he's a pretty good juggler.
I was about to say, I think this Chris does a pretty good job of juggling as it is.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for the clarification. I appreciate it.
Let's see if we have any public input on the look ahead calendar. Seeing no hands up, we'll close the public comment period and go ahead and wrap this item, leaving us at adjournment since we will not be having a closed session tonight. I just want to thank you all for an efficient and effective meeting and look forward to seeing you next month.
All right.
Thanks,
Good seeing
everybody.
you. Have a good evening, everybody.
Be safe,
Everyone, thank you.
Good night.